Good morning, students in RST 205, fall semester 21, Buddhist Wisdom. This is Dr. Brewster, and I'm recording this lesson on September 1st on Wednesday, but this will be converted into a YouTube video to be posted under course content, YouTube videos folder that you can take in by the end of the day on Friday. This YouTube video is accompanied by a discussion forum posting that is due by the end of the day on Friday. And the discussion forum posting, the prompt that is for the posting, elicits very open-ended reflection and your thoughts about any aspect of Siddhārtha's journey that resonates with you. Today's lesson aims to give you a very brief overview to the life of Siddhārtha. And Siddhārtha name is composed of two Sanskrit words, Siddha, and Artha. Siddha comes from the Sanskrit verbal root Sid, meaning to achieve, and Artha means goal or purpose. Siddhārtha Gautama is the one who achieved his purpose to become the awakened one, the Buddha. The word Buddha comes from the Sanskrit verbal root B-U-D-H, Bud, to wake up, literally. So to wake up or become awakened into reality as it really is. To wake up as if from a dream into reality. So Gautama, Siddhārtha Gautama, that is, became the Gautama Buddha, the awakened one. Siddhārtha was born into a historical time period in India, in northeastern India, what is now Bihar province. And this was a time during which Indian culture was very open to his message of an awakening compassion and peace. And the 6th century in India was a time of great social and intellectual ferment and rapid social transformations, including the growth of cities and the establishment of new monarchies, as well as the increasing monetization and mercantilism, and a growing merchant class with growing clout and power. And new monarchies were being established, and empires were carved out by ambitious warrior kings. So Siddhārtha was born in India, I should say, to the present day, is traditional society in India that is Brahmanical society, the society at which is headed by the Brahmins, the priestly caste. The traditional Hindu or Brahmanical society is characterized by a caste system. And the word for caste is the Sanskrit that is translated as caste, is the Sanskrit word varna, which literally means color, as in skin color. So from this, the name of the very social hierarchical system itself, we can tell that was highly racialized from its origins. Brahmins are the priestly caste in the traditional Indic caste system that was established by the Aryan people, the horse riding people from Inner Asia, who conquered the areas making up the Indian subcontinent in the 2nd millennium BCE. They were comparatively lighter skinned. The conquering people, the Aryan people were comparatively lighter complexion than the indigenous population of India at that time, the Dravidian peoples, and they imposed a highly racialized caste system on the population with the Brahmins at the top. And the Brahmins, the Siddhārtha that is, was born into this Kshatriya caste, the warriors and rulers. And the warriors and rulers are envisioned, or the castes, each of the castes that is envisioned as a certain part of the Hindu deity Brahma, the creator deity. And the Brahmins are literally and figuratively the head of the deity. Kshatriyas, the caste into which Siddhārtha was born, are the warriors, the rulers, and the rulers. They are the arms The Vaishyas are the legs. They're the farmers, traders, and merchants. They're those whose business was trade as well as agriculture. The Shudras are the feet. They are the laborers whose business is to serve the upper three castes. They're the peasants, or those of the lowest caste. And so finally, outside of the entire caste hierarchy are the Dalits. And the word Dalit comes from the Sanskrit word Dalita, meaning scattered. These are the people who exist scattered. They're the outcasts, so to speak. They're relegated to an underclass of street sweepers, butchers, and latrine cleaners. So the dirty and degrading occupations that are considered to be ritually defiling are relegated to the outcasts, the Dalitas. They engage in the dirty and defiling work that others don't want to do. So the caste system was established by, as I mentioned, by the fair-skinned, comparatively fair-skinned conquerors. Sorry, my corgi just stepped on the keyboard and moved forward 2 slides. So this caste system was established by the fair-skinned conquerors, the Aryans, who looked to the Vedas. The Sanskrit word means knowledge. This is a sacred knowledge of the Brahmins, the priestly caste. And the word Veda means knowledge, as I mentioned. They're the exclusive province, the knowledge of the priestly caste, who are tasked with memorizing and transmitting the Vedas. The Vedas, as well as the Brahmanas, which make up hymns to propitiate or satiate the gods, are an elaborate ritual texts that extol the various Brahmanical or Hindu deities. So the word Brahmanical is the term used more currently by South Asian study scholars to refer to the traditions that laid the groundwork for what became Hinduism. Hinduism itself is a term that was coined by the British and those within Indian society who sought to differentiate themselves from other religious groups. It was coined in modern times in the 19th century, but no Hindu refers to their own teaching as quote unquote Hinduism. They have other terms to refer to their own teaching. Brahmanical refers to the basic antecedents or the precedents, the heritage that has formed modern Hinduism. So the Vedas are the rituals that is to propitiate or satiate the gods. And they include animal sacrifices, burnt sacrifices to the various gods, including the god Indra, who is said to consume, he consumes herds of oxen, and he consumes oceans or pools of the intoxicating drink soma. So the gods, you have to keep them well fed, and you have to give them the drink that they like if you want to earn their favor. At the same time of this Brahmanical traditions are the practices of the Vedic sacrifice, we have the Upanishads. And the Upanishads were a sacred text that is more mystical and focused on individual self-cultivation through realizing the unity of the Atman, the individual soul of the human, with Brahman, the ultimate reality. So the Upanishads taught that it wasn't enough just to make sacrifices to the gods. And these were very opulent sacrifices that cost a lot of money to hire Brahmins to perform sacrifices on your behalf. These taught more individual self-cultivation or religious practice, such as meditation and yoga. And it's less focused on the outward ritual performance and need to rely on a priestly caste of Brahmins to gain spiritual benefits. And it's more focused on attaining spiritual realization for oneself by realizing unity of Atman, the soul, with Brahman. At the time of Siddhārtha, a lot of people were becoming disillusioned with the archaic, the ancient Vedic rites and the Brahmanical or the Brahmin caste that was regarded to be corrupt by many because they had a wife and children, the Brahmins, and they earned income through their ritual practices. and their observance of the Vedas. So they were believed to be sort of not practicing what they preached and lost credibility in the eyes of many. So at the time of Siddhārtha, the Vedic ritualism of the Brahmanical traditions that is headed by the Brahmanical caste, and the yogic practices of the Upanishads, they clash with the growing materialism that is found in the large cities. And at this time, groups of people, religious strivers, shramana, they emerged and they sought release, or moksha in Sanskrit, literally setting free, becoming unbound from the cycle of death and rebirth, samsara. So this time of Siddhārtha, there were these groups of shramanas, strivers, literally one who toils in spiritual cultivation and practice. They sought release, moksha, liberation from the whole cycle of rebirth and death. Samsara is the cyclical dying and becoming reborn endlessly without rhyme or reason, and from one life to the next. It comes from the Sanskrit verbal root, samsara, meaning to wander. So migrating from one body to the next, wandering and assuming a new body only to die out, to hurtle through the afterlife until becoming associated with a new body, becoming reincarnated again in an endless cycle of dying and becoming reborn. So samsara is wandering, and an important word that is used in the context of a lot of philosophy and religious traditions is transmigration, which is a very apropos translation for what happens in Buddhism to the individual sentient being who becomes reborn from one life to the next in an endless cycle of wandering or migrating, hence transmigration. So Buddhism initially emerges as a shramana movement, a movement of religious strivers who rejected the materialism of conventional society and rejected the dictates and rituals of the Brahmins. So Siddhārtha was born into this time of rapid social transformation and intellectual transformation. His name is Siddhārtha is deeply meaningful in light of the prophecy that was delivered at his birth. At his birth, the sage Asita, he was born, as I mentioned, in a Kshatriya, a warrior family, the rulers of Kapilavastu, a kingdom in northeastern India. And his father was king, Shuddhodana. Name means white rice in Sanskrit. And his father, at his birth, had a sage, rishi, a seer, a visionary come to deliver any messages or prophecies. And the prophecy maintained that was delivered by Asita said that if Siddhārtha were to remain in the household, he would go on to become a great king, inherit the throne, and be a great ruler. On the other hand, if he were to abandon the conventional household life and leave the palace, he would go on to become a great religious leader. So perhaps understandably, as many of you may have parents that don't want you to go far away or move super far away, understandably, his father, Siddhārtha's father, Shuddhodana, sheltered him and didn't want him to leave the house, which would inevitably mean that he would not be going to inherit the throne as a great ruler, but become a religious leader. So Siddhārtha's father, Shuddhodana, coddled Siddhārtha and cosseted him and sheltered him from anything remotely unpleasant in life. So it is said in narratives of Siddhārtha's upbringing that he was not exposed to anything unpleasant, any sick people, any dying dead bodies, or even aged people. His interaction with them was regulated and limited. And it was said that when Siddhārtha, as a young boy, were to come into contact with old people, aged folk, he would be disgusted and think, oh, what is wrong with this person with their liver spots and the wrinkles and gray hairs, and it would make him feel unpleasant. So his father went to great lengths to make sure that Siddhārtha wouldn't be exposed to anything remotely unpleasant that would make him question his cosseted and sheltered life in the palace, the confines of the palace. And the father, Siddhārtha, he combed the palace grounds to make sure that there was no dead people, dead bodies, sick individuals, or aged, decrepit folk that would make Siddhārtha think that life was anything but a roses and glitter. So in his late 20s, however, Siddhārtha takes a joyride in this part of the palace grounds that hadn't been combed and manicured carefully to get rid of anything unpleasant, such as old people, sick people, or dead individuals. And Siddhārtha, on this fateful journey outside palace, in the palace grounds, he comes first into contact with a old man. And his chariot driver, he's being driven in a chariot, says that this is the fate. Siddhārtha asked the chariot driver, what is wrong with that old man? And the chariot driver says, well, Siddhārtha, look, this is the fate of anyone, everybody, even your beloved life, Yasodhara. So Siddhārtha was married to his beloved wife in his late 20s and had a young son, Rahul, at the time. So his chariot driver says to Siddhārtha, when Siddhārtha is distressed at seeing and wondering what's wrong with that old man, that this is the fate of everyone. Even the rosy cheek of your beloved wife, Yasodhara, will become decrepit and wrinkled. And Siddhārtha falls into a deep melancholy, and he can't enjoy the things as much that gave him pleasure. The pleasures of princely life. He becomes disillusioned with them. The second fateful sight that Siddhārtha comes into contact with is the sick man in this panel up here on the left. And the sick man, an invalid, drives home the point to Siddhārtha and illustrates to Siddhārtha that disease is not kept at bay by any amount of worldly riches. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how young you are, or how healthy you are at the current moment. Everyone will fall prey eventually to disease and sickness. The third sight of the four sights that galvanize Siddhārtha, that motivate him to begin his religious quest and leave the confines of the palace to become a Shramana, a religious striver. The third sight is a dead body, a corpse, shown here on the upper right. And when Siddhārtha sees the corpse, he realizes that death is a basic condition of being born in a mortal body. So the Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, teaches that the leading cause of dying is becoming born in the first place. So the basic condition of being born in a mortal body is that you will fall prey to old age, sickness, and death, aging, sickness, and dying. So the fourth sight that Siddhārtha comes into contact with on his joyride outside the palace is an ascetic. An ascetic means someone who's a hermit, or one who is in religious isolation and is a mendicant, one who's a religious beggar. One who is, the word for a monastic in Chinese is one who has left home. So one who has left the household responsibilities behind and to follow a monastic or a mendicant path, that is begging for alms and subsisting on people's table scraps, begging for food. So with the witnessing the ascetic, Siddhārtha is filled with hope. And he realizes that there is a way, there is a path to realize freedom from this sickness, aging, and dying. And that is the path of spirituality. So Siddhārtha, having made the vow to renounce the household life and pursue his spiritual quest without being confined by conventional secular responsibilities. He decides at age 29 he's going to renounce the household life, and in the middle of the night he leaves his wife Yashodhara and his son Rahula in the palace in order to seek the truth and meaning of life. So he leaves his family in the middle of the night, and he goes to the riverbank, and he cuts his hair, and he exchanges clothes, his princely robes, with the rags of a passerby. Siddhārtha eventually goes to the capital of the state of Magadha, the city of Rajagriha, and he goes to ask where the most advanced and most wise gurus are located. And he eventually ends up at the ashram, or the hermitage of Adada Kalama, who teaches a form of meditation that realizes his absorption into non-existence, absolute non-existence, wherein the state of absolute non-being, wherein all physical component to experience disappears and all crude semblances of consciousness vanish entirely. Siddhārtha attains this highest attainment that is taught by Adada Kalama, but finds it still wanting and lacking in the genuine peace of mind, wisdom, selflessness, and true awakening that he is yearning for. So eventually, although Adada Kalama offers to appoint Siddhārtha as a teacher on the same pedestal as the guru himself, equal to the master, Gautama finds that he wants to move on and look for other gurus to develop that have other insights. So he goes to study with Uttaraka Ramaputra, and Siddhārtha attains the highest realization that is taught by Uttaraka Ramaputra, namely the neither perception nor non-perception. This is a state of meditative absorption that is entirely immaterial, and there's no physical or material component to experience at all. There's any trace of material existence in the experience that is realized in the state of neither perception nor non-perception. So Siddhārtha attains this high state of meditative absorption taught by Uttaraka Ramaputra, but still finds that it is wanting in the peace of mind that he's looking for, nirvana. So after leaving Uttaraka, Siddhārtha goes to Uruvela forest, the forest of Uruvela, to practice austerities with various ascetics. And legend has it that he practices or forgoes food and only intakes the absolute minimum of nourishment and water, goes for days and nights without sleeping, and stays in one posture 4 days on end. He's said to become so emaciated, so thin that his navel touched his spine, as shown in this Thai statue of Siddhārtha during his ascetic period, when he was undergoing self-mortification of self-denial, only taking the minimum of nourishment. But Siddhārtha realized that eventually after several years of ascetic practice on his own, and with a group of ascetics, but Gautama was still unable to find the nirvana and awakening. So he leaves the ascetics in Uruvela and goes out to practice under a shady peepal tree, not under the harsh Indian exposed sunlight, but under the shady canopy of a peepal tree. And Siddhārtha accepts the nourishment of a bowl of milk from a village girl, Sujata. And Siddhārtha realized he's restored and rejuvenated, and he realized that he is creating his own suffering by practicing self-denial. So Siddhārtha endeavors to practice meditation under the peepal tree, and he struggles with the demon Mara, a tempter spirit who tries to lead spiritual seekers astray and keep them in this world of samsara, of cyclical living and dying from one life to the next, where he can influence their lives. So Mara sends his three daughters, depicted here, the daughters of discontent, passion, and attachment, to try to tempt Siddhārtha and lead him off break his resolve to realize final awakening, nirvana. But Siddhārtha resists the entreaties of the three daughters of Mara, and it's said that he resists their entreaties, but Mara then tries to plant doubts in Siddhārtha's head that Siddhārtha is not worthy enough. He doesn't have it in him to realize this final attainment of liberation. He can't do it. It's too hard. So Siddhārtha's resolve is tested by Mara. Siddhārtha eventually, after meditating for 49 days under the peepal tree, Siddhārtha, and banishing the demons, the demon Mara, resisting the temptations of the demon, Siddhārtha, that is, attains his artha. Siddhārtha becomes the Buddha, the awakened one, at age 35. So leaving home at age 29, and then Siddhārtha attains nirvana, initial nirvana, at age 35. So there's two types of nirvana that are mentioned in Buddhism. This is apropos of the nirvana or awakening of the Buddha, because the Buddha attains this nirvana described as nirvana with remainder, that he's under the Bodhi tree at age 35. This is the type of nirvana wherein you're still burning off the karma that has resulted in a final rebirth, but you're not going to be subject to rebirth. You're no longer going to become reincarnated or undergo a rebirth. So that means that this is your final mortal body that before you attain the final cessation, the relinquishment and cessation of the physical and psychological conditions of suffering in a contaminated body and mind. So that's the second form of nirvana that the Buddha attains at age 80. After teaching for 45 years, he attains initial nirvana, that is, at age 35, teaches for 45 years. And the content of his teaching is the content that we will be focusing on in this course, the Dharma. That is the teaching of the Buddha. So he teaches the Dharma and he founds the Sangha, the Buddhist community. So the Sangha refers to, in its narrow sense, to the community of celibate monastics, of bhikshus and bhikshunis, monks and nuns. In its expanded sense, however, it refers to all followers of Buddhist traditions that take the three refuges, that is, abide in the Buddha, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, the Dharma, his teaching, and the community. So I just will sum up with a final point about the distinction between the initial nirvana, or nirvana with remainder, and nirvana without remainder. So basically, Siddhārtha attains the nirvana with remainder when he gets his first glimpse of reality as it really is, and attains the awakening at age 35 under the Bodhi tree. But then after teaching for 45 years and founding the Sangha, the community of followers, the monastic community, and the lay community, he eventually decides to relinquish his vital power. And so he could have lived for another 120 years, it is said in traditional narratives of the life of Siddhārtha, but he decided not to set a bad precedent for his followers, to not lead them to become clinging or attached to the mortal body, and to not have unwholesome clinging to material existence. The Buddha decides to relinquish his vital power at age 80 and realizes nirvana without remainder. That is, he has attained the state of no longer becoming reborn. He is no longer subject to the conditions of physical and mental suffering in a contaminated body and mind, subject to affliction. So that is the definition of nirvana without remainder. So in conclusion, much of the Buddha's, the Shakyamuni Buddha, that is the historical Buddha, much of his 45 years after realizing nirvana with remainder was devoted to teaching the Dharma, founding the Sangha, and forming his disciples and disciplining them in the path. So even in the very moments before his mortal passing and attainment of final nirvana without remainder, the Buddha was carrying out the task compassionately, his task of teaching and instructing others and acting compassionately for the sake of others. The Shakyamuni Buddha offered to the world his own spiritual experience, and he modeled it, that enlightened and nirvanic ideal, with the joy, loving kindness, and compassion. And his Dharma offers a path to realize the experience of nirvana, the freedom from suffering. All right, so thank you very much for your attention. And I look forward to reading your reflections on what, if any, aspect of Siddhārtha's life journey, his quest for awakening, resonates with you. All right, thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.